The first thing I noticed was not the envelope. It was my sister's phone balanced against her water glass and pointed directly at my face. My name is Maris Bellamy. That night, I was sitting in a private dining room at a restaurant in Milwaukee's historic Third Ward, pretending my birthday dinner felt normal. My mother, Audra, had chosen the place-invited relatives I rarely saw and ordered wine before I arrived. The room was quiet, in a way that did not feel respectful. It felt arranged. I sat in the center chair because my mother had insisted on it. Tessa sat across from me, smiling too easily, her thumb resting near the screen of her phone. Beside my mother's plate was a cream-colored envelope thick enough to hold more than a card. I remember thinking, so this is why they wanted an audience. My mother slid the envelope across the table. "This is from all of us," she said. No one reached for their glass. No one made a joke. I opened it carefully because by then I already understood that whatever was inside had been prepared to hurt me. It was a disownment letter. My name was typed near the top, followed by a formal statement saying I was no longer recognized as part of the Bellamy family. My mother's signature was at the bottom. Tessa's was beside it. For a few seconds, I heard only the faint sound of silverware from the main dining room. Then I looked up and saw my relatives watching for the reaction they had been promised. I read the letter again, slower this time. "Does everyone here understand what this is?" My mother's face tightened. "We do." I folded the paper, placed it back in the envelope, and put it in my purse. "Thank you," I said. "This will make things easier." Tessa's smile faded first. She did not know there was already a signed contract in that same purse, and neither did my mother. The letter in my purse looked like the reason for the dinner, but it wasn't. It was only the part they wanted everyone to see. The real fight had started months earlier, after my grandmother's house in Bayview became part of the estate. It wasn't a mansion, and it didn't look impressive from the street, but it sat close enough to Lake Michigan that realtors had started using words like rare and development potential. To me, it was still the place where my grandmother kept spare blankets in the hall closet and never asked me to explain why I wasn't more like Tessa. She had left the house to both of us equally. The will also said that if one of us wanted out, the other had the first right to buy her share before it could be sold to anyone else. I knew that because I had read the documents myself, then read them again with Nolan Greer, the attorney I hired after my mother began calling the house a family burden. Tessa wanted it sold quickly. Her boutique wellness studio had failed, though she still posted photos as if business was thriving. My mother protected that image like it was another child. She said Tessa had responsibilities, investors, and a future to save while I had memories I needed to outgrow. "You're holding everyone back over an old house," my mother told me one afternoon. "No," I said. "I'm refusing to give away something Grandma legally left me." That was the moment her face changed. Not with sadness, but calculation. After that, every conversation became sharper. Tessa sent messages about market value closing timelines and how selfish I was being. My mother stopped pretending she wanted agreement and started demanding obedience. So when she gave me that disownment letter at dinner, I understood what it really meant. They weren't cutting me off because I had no worth. They were trying to make me feel unworthy enough to sign away the house. For years, my family treated my work like something I should apologize for. My mother could describe Tessa's career with exact titles, dates, and promotions. But when people asked about me, she always paused before saying I worked in hospitality, as if the word itself needed to be softened. At family dinners, I was useful when glasses needed refilling or plates needed clearing. If someone spilled wine, my mother looked at me before she looked at the server. Tessa would laugh and say I had professional instincts, and everyone treated it like a harmless joke. It wasn't harmless, it was training. I worked at a respected lakefront hotel, and my job required more than smiling at guests. I handled VIP arrivals, corrected mistakes before they reached management, and learned how to calm people who were used to getting their way. I spoke conversational Spanish and French not perfectly, but well enough to make people feel seen instead of processed. My family never asked about that part. They only cared that I served people. You could still do something serious with your life, my mother once told me. I already do, I said. She looked at me like confidence from me was an inconvenience. By then, I had stopped explaining myself. I saved Tessa's messages about selling the Bayview house. I kept emails where my mother pressured me to be reasonable. I forwarded everything to Nolan Greer, the attorney I had hired quietly, because I knew better than to walk into any family conversation without proof. They thought I was silent because I was scared. The truth was simpler. I had learned that the less I announced, the less they could interfere with. The night Graham Rourke noticed me began with rain hitting the hotel windows hard enough to make guests turn their heads. I was working the evening shift at the Lakefront Hotel when the international business group arrived 40 minutes early. Their private dining room wasn't ready. The kitchen had prepared the wrong first course, and the assistant manager looked at the reservation sheet like it might change if he stared long enough. The lead guest, a French executive named Laurent Moreau, spoke quietly, which made his disappointment worse. He didn't raise his voice. He only asked whether our hotel often treated confirmed arrangements as suggestions. I saw panic move through the staff. I also saw the bigger problem. This wasn't about a room or a menu. It was about respect. I stepped forward before anyone could apologize badly. Mr. Moreau, your room isn't ready, and I won't insult you by pretending it is. I can move your group to the Lakeview Lounge, now adjust the service privately, and make sure your dinner begins there without making your guests wait in a hallway. His eyes stayed on me for a long second. You understand the problem? I do, I said, and I can fix it. I spoke to him in French when I explained the temporary arrangement, then changed the menu with the kitchen so it looked intentional instead of rushed. We brought in warmer lighting, moved the wine service first, and gave the group a view of the storm over the lake while the dining room was reset. By the end of the evening, Mr. Moreau shook my hand and asked for my name. Only later did I learn that Graham Rourke, CEO of Harborline Grand Hotels, had been sitting in a nearby meeting room with a clear view of the lounge. He hadn't seen a replaceable employee. He had seen what my family never wanted to name. 3 days later, an email arrived from his office asking if I would discuss my future. I almost didn't reply to Graham Rourke's email. For 2 days, I opened it during breaks, read the same polite lines, and closed it again. Harborline Grand Hotels wasn't a small company, and people like me didn't usually get invited into rooms like that unless someone needed coffee directions or damage control. I knew that thought wasn't really mine. It was my mother's voice repeated often enough that it had started to sound practical. When I finally agreed to meet, nothing about the process felt like a favor. Graham was direct. He asked what I would change about VIP hospitality in Milwaukee, how I would train staff to handle international guests, and why so many hotels treated culture like decoration instead of service. Because it's easier to memorize preferences than understand people, I said. He leaned back slightly, and for the first time, I felt the room shift toward me. There were more interviews after that. I completed case studies, wrote a plan for a guest experience program, and sat through a simulated crisis where 2 actors played angry clients demanding impossible solutions. I didn't solve it by promising everything. I slowed the room down, separated the real problem from the performance, and gave them options they could accept without losing face. Each round made me nervous, but it also made something inside me steadier. I wasn't pretending to be qualified. I was explaining work I had already been doing for years. In the final meeting, Graham placed the offer in front of me. Harborline was creating a cultural guest experience division, and he wanted me to lead the Milwaukee pilot as director. The salary was $185,000 with benefits, a performance bonus, and authority over the training budget. I signed with my hands, calm. 2 weeks before my birthday, I walked out with a contract in my bag and told no one in my family. Good news had never been safe around them. Back in that private dining room, I thought the disownment letter was the whole performance. I was wrong. After I placed the envelope in my purse, my mother didn't look satisfied. She looked impatient, as if the first part had taken longer than expected. Tessa was still recording, though her smile had slipped a little. I could tell she had expected tears, maybe an apology, maybe me asking what I could do to fix things. Instead, I sat there with my hands folded in my lap. My mother reached into the folder beside her chair and took out another set of papers. These were thicker, with tabs already placed, where a signature would go. "Since you're accepting the separation," she said, "we should make the rest clean." I looked at the top page and saw the words "release of property interest." My stomach tightened, but my face stayed still. The document named the Bayview house my grandmother's house and asked me to give up my claim and purchase rights so Tessa could move forward with a sale. There it was. Not family grief. Not disappointment. Just paperwork hiding behind a birthday cake. Tessa leaned closer to her phone. "You said it yourself. This makes things easier." "No," I said, looking at the document. "I said the letter made things easier. I didn't say I was signing away inherited property." My mother's voice lowered. "You can't keep pretending you belong to this family while refusing to help it. You just handed me a letter saying I don't belong to it." A few relatives shifted in their chairs. Someone cleared their throat. The control in the room began to loosen. Tessa tried to recover it. "You couldn't afford that house anyway, Maris. Stop making this ugly." I turned toward her phone. "For the recording, I'm being asked at my birthday dinner to surrender legal rights to my grandmother's house after receiving a disownment letter from my mother and sister. I won't sign anything without my attorney." Tessa's hand moved fast, but not fast enough. The red light was still on. My mother stared at me as if she had never seen me clearly before, and maybe she hadn't. I took my purse, left the release on the table, and walked out with the only paper they had willingly given me. The next morning, I woke before my alarm and lay still for a minute, waiting for guilt to arrive. It didn't come the way it used to. There was only a quiet heaviness, and under it, a strange kind of room to breathe. At 9 o'clock, I walked into Harborline Grand Hotels with the disownment letter still in my purse and my signed contract in a leather folder. The lobby was busy, but no one looked at me like I had slipped in by mistake. At the security desk, a man checked my identification and handed me a badge with my name and title printed beneath it. Director of Cultural Guest Experience. I read it twice before clipping it to my jacket. Graham Rourke met me near the elevators. He didn't ask about my family, though I wondered if he had seen enough on my face to know better. "Your office is ready," he said. "So is your team." The office overlooked downtown Milwaukee and a strip of lake beyond the buildings. On the door was a small metal plate with my name on it. Maris Bellamy. Not Audra's disappointment, not Tessa's problem, not the daughter who needed to be corrected. Just mine. Graham handed me a folder for the upcoming hospitality gala. Harborline would announce the new division there, and I saw my mother's committee listed among the event partners. Tessa's name appeared on the networking guest list. For one moment, the timing felt almost too sharp. Graham watched me read it. "Will that be a problem?" "No," I said, closing the folder. "I've spent enough time making myself smaller for them. I didn't want revenge. I wanted to do my job well enough that their opinion no longer mattered." The gala was held in a ballroom near the lakefront, the kind of room my mother trusted, because everyone knew how to behave in public. I arrived through the staff entrance with Graham's team wearing the navy dress I had bought for my first week as director and waited behind the stage while guests took their seats. From the side curtain, I saw my mother almost immediately. Audra moved through the room with her careful smile, touching elbows, accepting compliments, acting as if nothing in her life had changed. Tessa stood beside her in a cream suit, scanning the room for useful people. For once, her phone was in her hand, but not aimed at me. They didn't know I was there. I thought seeing them would shake me more. It did, but not enough to move me from where I stood. Graham stepped onto the stage and began speaking about Harbor Line's new Cultural Guest Experience division. He talked about trust language, guest dignity, and the cost of overlooking people who understood service from the inside. His voice stayed professional, but every word landed somewhere personal in me. Then, he said my name. Please welcome Maris Bellamy, our new Director of Cultural Guest Experience. For a second, I heard the applause before I felt my legs move. When I walked onto the stage, my mother's face changed in a way I had never seen before. Tessa lowered her phone like it had become too heavy to hold. Around them, people turned with recognition, piecing together the daughter they had heard dismissed, with the woman being introduced by one of the most respected hotel executives in Milwaukee. I took the microphone from Graham. "Thank you," I said. "I've learned that service isn't about being beneath anyone. It's about noticing what others miss and respecting people before they have to prove they deserve it." I didn't look at my mother when I said it. I didn't have to. For the first time, the silence at their table belonged to them, not me. After the gala, my mother tried to make the story smaller. By the next morning, she had called 2 relatives, 1 committee member, and someone from Harbor Line's event office to say there had been a misunderstanding. According to her, the birthday dinner had been emotional, the disownment letter had been symbolic, and I had taken a private family matter too far. Tessa tried a different version. She said I had embarrassed our mother on purpose because I was bitter about the house. That might have worked if she hadn't recorded the dinner herself. 3 days later, a cousin sent me the video with a short message. "I think you should have this." I watched only once. There was my mother sliding the envelope toward me. There was Tessa smiling behind her phone. There was the second document, the one asking me to release my rights to the Bayview house. And there was my own voice, steady enough to surprise me, saying I wouldn't sign inherited property away under pressure. I forwarded everything to Nolan Greer. "This changes the tone," he told me. "They can argue family drama. They can't argue that they weren't pressuring you." The legal part moved slowly, but it moved in the right direction. Nolan sent formal notice that I intended to keep my rights under the will. Tessa couldn't force a quick sale because Grandma had given me the first chance to buy out her share. When creditors began pressing her over the failed studio, she lost the luxury of pretending she was only being practical. My mother lost her committee position first. Donors didn't like the video, and they liked the property pressure even less. Tessa sold jewelry, then her car, then finally agreed to sell me her half of the house at appraised value. No one was dragged away. No one vanished overnight. They simply lost the control they had mistaken for love, and for them, that was punishment enough. Months later, I stood in the kitchen of the Bayview house with the deed in my name and my grandmother's old table still against the wall. I had bought Tessa's half at appraised value not because she deserved generosity, but because I wanted the ending to be clean. No hidden deal, no emotional debt, no reason for anyone to say I had taken what wasn't mine. I restored the house slowly. The kitchen stayed simple. The upstairs rooms became study spaces for young hospitality workers in the training fund. I started through Harbor Line. On the first evening, we opened the doors. 6 students sat around that old table with notebooks, coffee, and nervous smiles. I watched them listen to one another, and for the first time in that house, the past didn't feel heavier than the future. My mother moved through Milwaukee much more quietly after losing her committee position. Tessa was still paying down debt without the family image to protect her. They both sent messages at different times, careful and softened by consequence. But neither one began with accountability. I didn't answer. I didn't. I've learned that peace sometimes begins when you stop explaining your worth to people committed to misunderstanding it. Boundaries don't make you cruel. They make room for the part of you that has been waiting to breathe. The disownment letter stayed in a folder in my desk, not framed, not displayed, just kept. It was no longer a wound I touched to remind myself of pain. It was proof that the night they tried to erase me became the night I finally chose myself. Share this story with someone who needs to remember that walking away can also be a beginning.